My name is Megan Fox. I am the founder of Glass Bottom Games. And yeah, I'm working on SkateBIRD.
So Megan, let's talk about this. Like, what's been going on with this game? We've seen it a few times at certain conventions before the plague, and everyone was talking about it, really enjoyed it. What's going on new with SkateBIRD that you can talk about?
Well, so I'm assuming everyone remembers the demo, or maybe not. There was a demo in February of this year, I think, which was the Steam Festival, yada, 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 which was the rooftop demo. And at that point, you saw there was a story, and yeah, most of this year has been writing the rest of the story. We've now got full arc, full characters, full everything, and the game's basically done. The Yeah, that's the big thing. The game is actually done, which is really exciting. It's taken like 3 years, and we're here now. So awesome.
How did the stay-at-home pandemic, did that affect the development at all? Were you guys already remote at the time the stay-at-home orders happened?
SkateBIRD, well, Glass Bottom Games has been remote from the beginning, just because lengthy opinions about it being more ethical, it being better for international workers, a lot of conversation. But yeah, we've been virtual since the beginning, and so going on pandemic lockdown, in terms of organization, didn't really influence us. In terms of individual people, like one of our people is in Europe, or is in England, and they were kind of panicked because England at various times wasn't maybe handling things the best. And we had our localization staff is in South America in Rio. So whenever our localization, they'd scheduled a block of time that they were going to do the work. Like right when we were looking at doing that, Rio went on like citywide national shut. It was like citywide or national, I forget which, but it was a big, massive shutdown. So the whole office emptied, and they were not set up for remote work. So yeah, it kind of depends on person to person. But managerially, my side, that kind of thing, yeah, it was just kind of. I already live out in the relative boonies, which you can't see out here would be trees and such. So I just kind of stayed on my hill more and became even more of a hill person and even more antisocial, which I'm a little concerned about long term since my social skills weren't great to begin with, but we'll see. I'm assuming everyone's going to have that problem.
Can you talk about like the story in SkateBIRD? What kind of crazy characters are we going to see in this universe that your team has created?
Well, SkateBIRD is a game about trying your best and a little bird who is trying their best to basically just get their big friend to play with them. Their human used to be into skateboarding, used to be in a lot of things, and then over time the bird saw less of the big friend, and big friend's mood kind of fell in the tank and didn't play with him anymore, and working more at big tech job, which is unpleasant. And so the story is you essentially breaking out of your bedroom, whereupon you have built skate park stuff because you've taught yourself to skateboard. Well, you've collectively, as a group, figured out skateboarding. There's other birds. And you open the window and then bring in more birds, and then there's wild birds, and then you fly to a rooftop, and then you break into an office, and hijinks ensue, and you might take down a global multinational corporation completely by accident, or you might not. Who knows?
Only time will tell. What do you think? Why did you guys go ahead and decide to spend so much time on a story mode? Generally, you don't see that kind of effort in especially a skating game.
So the game started like way, way, way back when, before the Kickstarter. The game started as going to be just a sandbox game with lo-fi graphics. We announced it. People seemed more into it. So like, okay, maybe we can make it a little nicer, make the sandbox a little more involved. Maybe we can do like Tony Hawk 1 levels of you go up to a person, they say do 30,000 points, and that's about the most context you get. Then the Kickstarter happened, and people were really into the idea of the characters of the bird. Like, there's very little character at that point. It was just a cute little bird, but people were really into it. And there was more interest, and E3 kind of exploded our the worldwide awareness of SkateBIRD or whatever. Suddenly we were everywhere. So I was like, well, maybe we can actually put some more time into this and make this a bigger game. And why story mode in particular? Sandbox gameplay tends to appeal to more hardcore players because you have to be able to make your own fun. There's very little to attach to unless you already know this is a skateboarding game, this is how I engage with it, this is why I think it's fun. Like, that's mechanical whenever you're down to sandbox, which is fine. But whenever your audience appears to be a lot of first-time skateboarding game people, you kind of need at least something to introduce them to what is an ollie, what is a transfer, why is it fun to go up and down a ramp, why would you do these things? So some kind of story mode becomes relatively important, which was what I think in the Kickstarter we were calling it Bread Slices of Life, which was 2 years ago. Jesus. Anyways, it's evolved a lot since then. We started doing this tape mode, which was going to be unlockable tapes you would find that you could then play in a little VCR TV combo thing as a bird, and there'd be little skits, and that was going to be the story content. So it'd be sandbox mode, where you would find the stories and play them or not play them as you wanted, to at least give some minimal, and we thought cheap approach. Like, that was the super low budget how to do a story. And then we started putting it together, and it turns out the tapes weren't saving as much time. Like, we were basically doing full cutscenes anyways, and it felt weird to not just do cutscenes for the actual game. So, yeah, around that point, we decided, hey, got Zalave writes. Zalave's great at writing. Sure, let's let him cut loose and see what happens. And yeah, that's how we got to where we are now.
Is it difficult, especially for your game being crowdfunded and a Kickstarter? You have like a roadmap of what you promised with, like, you know, stretch goals and stuff like that, and then maybe during the development process that you think of a new idea that might improve upon the game that's not on the roadmap. Is it hard balancing those two to make sure the crowdfundies get what they're promised, but also improve on the game as you're developing it?
Yes and no. Whenever we did the Kickstarter stretch goals, we were pretty clear that most of these are going to be post-launch because we just don't have time to do them pre-launch, and everyone seemed on board with that. We'll see if whenever we launch the game, if we get a bunch of complaining people that, well, you promised us. Well, no, we didn't, but you misread it, so we'll see. Hopefully not. People have been pretty chill so far. But we were really conscious of trying to make sure we were not expanding scope, basically, which is why all of it's post-launch. Because all of it was kind of kicked down the road being post-launch content we were meant to tack on at the end, it was a lot easier to keep it from being stuff that would be, whenever you've made something designed to be attached to the end of something, that something can change a lot, and then you can still glue on the thing you promised, more or less. If we'd instead promised it so that, petting the bird would be an excellent example. You cannot pet the bird in game right now. That's going to be one of the things we add on post-launch. It'll be fun. It'll be very cute. But if we had built that into the game, like if we'd had to build it into the game from the beginning, it might have distorted what we had to make a little bit, since the game we've made is cute, but petting the bird is not really core to it. It's a skating game with a cute story and all of that stuff. So yeah, it's mostly about how you design your Kickstarter and trying to make sure that you're not adding stretch goals that can greatly distort the game, which is sometimes impossible or sometimes not. Some things, like we promised a story mode, which is now why we have this bigger story mode. Sometimes they expand, but if you're smart about it, usually you can avoid most of the worst offenders. And when people screw that up, usually it's their first Kickstarter and you just don't know this stuff until you've done, like, we're on Kickstarter 3 or 4 if you count the failed ones. We've done a couple. Your first Kickstarter, you have no audience, you have no concept of what audience even means. Usually, you go out and you're not really sure what you're making, and your pitch usually kind of sucks or is missing the point entirely. You're speaking to other developers rather than to community. You don't even know what community you're speaking to. A whole bunch of stuff. And then usually by about day 20 in your first Kickstarter, you've gone, oh shit, I finally understand what I'm supposed to do. Oh god, I fucked this up. And then that's a lot of times why you see them stop their Kickstarter around day 20. Part of it is they don't want to fail, which I don't know. But part of it is that at that point they know, oh Jesus, this is what we should have done at the beginning. We might as well just start again now while we still have time. So, and then you start it again, and usually your second run is a lot stronger, because at that point you've at least got whatever community you built over 20 days, and then if you can start with them and get them all on the same page at the very beginning, often then that can snowball and you finally have anything you're doing with audience, whether it be game dev, music, whatever. You need your true fans, like that core group, before you really stand a chance at anything else. And once you have them and get them all on the same page and they're all talking about it at the same time and talking to their friends, then you can actually get that expansion. But without that initial ball, you're kind of screwed.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting, especially with your game. Like, you guys came out and got some buzz really quickly due to the fact that I think people really wanted another Tony Hawk-esque game that they just weren't getting. I mean, skate franchises had kind of been produced into the ground, and like they started messing up on a lot of the skate franchises. I mean, I'm thinking of the very last Tony Hawk that they did. It was not really well received, and then your game comes out. It was kind of filling this big gap in the video game community that I don't think any distributors or studios thought was missing, but apparently there was.
Yeah, and so what was the timeline? I believe when we came out, Session hadn't released yet, but had done their Kickstarter and had probably some alphas or betas going. I believe Skater XL was actually at market before us, and they were kind of the one that proved that, hey, this market is actually viable. I don't know if they'd exploded. I want to say they were actually like a big deal by that point. But still, it was essentially like Session, sort of, Skater XL, and us for a while. And that kind of created this I think having all of us present finally was enough to prove to larger players in the market that suddenly skateboarding was a genre that was actually important again to people. It had always been, but now there was finally something to point to. And then after that, you saw the EA Skate. They did their E3 thing that was barely an E3 thing, where they basically just said, hey, we're working on Skate 4. Don't have anything to show you yet because we thought of this like 2 minutes ago, but yay! And then Tony Hawk, the Tony Hawk 1 and 2 reboot, remake, whatever, came out. How was it? End of 2020? I think it was in 2020 somewhere, wasn't it? And that apparently had like, I want to say that had a really protracted development, like a year, maybe slightly over a year. So again, the timelines all kind of line up where it's like, I guess they finally realized that there was enough of an interest and bigger market went for it. And hopefully that'll mean that now the SkateBIRD launches and Skater XL did really well, and Session, I believe, is actually to market now, though maybe not. I want to say it is. Regardless, hopefully all of us do well, and then maybe we actually get Skate 4, and Skate 4 is a big budget game again, and we get actual big budget skateboarding games again, and that'd be awesome. I really hope they do more Tony Hawk, like at least give us, Tony Hawk 3, that'd be nice. But I don't know if they're going to, so we'll see, but at least there's a small bubble happening again, so that's cool.